Hey everyone, welcome back to Tech Leaders Unplugged. It's Friday, the end of the week, and we're having another great conversation today. I'm speaking with Bill Vannerus, and we're talking about the blockchain revolution. That's right, we're going to go there today and specifically discuss how blockchain could be transforming industries with decentralized, secure, and transparent transactions. So welcome, Bill. I'm looking forward to having this chat with you.
Hey, Tullio, glad to be here. Glad to be back.
Yeah, exciting. So, by the way, if anybody has any questions or comments, wherever you're watching us, just post them in your chat. We will see them and we will try to respond or engage you in the conversation as best as we can. So, there are some key things that within the blockchain realm that can disrupt business as usual. And most of the experience that people know of related to blockchain, speaks to crypto. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how what's happened to date isn't really representative of what blockchain is supposed to actually deliver. Specifically, I'm talking about decentralized finance, what's known as DeFi. And so the idea of DeFi is where financial ecosystem is permissionless. It's very transparent and open, puts the control in the end user. So it decentralizes how money is transferred and borrowed and transactions. But it provides a vehicle where you, as the user, are in control. Now, Bill, let's talk about this a little bit, because I think a lot of people's like, well, that doesn't work. Everybody's lost their money. I mean, look at what happened with so-and-so.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Maybe we need to sort of clarify what the ultimate value of DeFi is, or DEX, for example, versus how it's been so far. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, thanks, Tullio. Yeah, I mean, I think what blockchain technology, and I think a lot of people think about when they hear blockchain, they think about crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and such, and some of the things that have happened in the last few months, which have been kind of the failure of more unregulated, centralized types of exchanges, and what blockchain, the promise and what excites me about blockchain technology is that, like you mentioned, it's permissionless, it's transparent, it's open, it's trustless, and it's fast, right? And it has lots of applications, and we're talking about DeFi, decentralized finance, and decentralized trading platforms, DEXs, right? Providing for a lower point of entry for a lot of people. It's like banking all the unbanked. There's millions of people out there that the point of entry for investing, for trading, for being borrowing, lending is not available to them, right? I think that's the promise. And the disruption is be cutting out middlemen, making it more efficient, really making it inclusive for a lot more people. That's exciting, right?
Yeah.
It opens
It's the
a lot
idea
of
of
doors.
bringing back the village, right, Bill? I
Right.
mean, that's really
Yeah.
what it comes down to. It's bringing back the village. The way it's been managed to date, especially when it comes to investment or crypto trading, it has not been decentralized. It has not empowered the investor, the end user, because basically what it's done is I give my money to someone who manages for me, but they manage it for me and they have absolutely zero regulation.
Right.
When you look at it from that perspective, you'd have to kind of almost be insane to just hand over your money to someone else to manage that has no regulation. So we historically, what's happened is we replicated the traditional money system, but without regulations.
Right.
The promise of true DeFi and DEX, decentralized exchange, is where I become the custodial of my investment. The money, the information sits in my wallet, and it doesn't ever get sent over to someone else. Now there's smart contracts and things in place that allows me to transact, and all that is transparent, but I never give over the control to someone else or some authority that does it.
Right.
So So the regulation is completely within my control. That's why it's called decentralized.
Right.
I think it's
And
important to clarify that. What are your thoughts on that,
yeah,
Bill?
I mean, I agree. And I think, we haven't quite gotten there yet. And we've seen some examples of that. But I think it also takes, when I thought about, how would I engage this, it's a different mindset, right? You have to take personal responsibility if you're going to be your own bank, right? And your own custodian, the wallet's yours, the private keys are your responsibility, you know, not your not your wallet, not your keys, not your crypto, right? So that's a different shift in mindset, versus, I give that responsibility over to a centralized platform, and then all I do is put my money in, and things happen. I think it takes more research, more responsibility to really understand what the differences are, so that when you engage, right, you have to be active, right? You have to understand what you're doing. You have to take active participation, and that yields potential benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I equate it to this idea that it's not a TV dinner mindset, right? You don't stick it in the microwave and it's done. You actually have to go back to taking accountability and responsibility for how you control and manifest the investments you're making. And like you said, some people just want to hand it over, but there's risks with that, right? That's
Right.
the traditional model, and that's why it's also been a big problem with cryptos, because they've handed it over, and then without regulation, we know the story, right?
Yeah.
Let's continue talking about this, because how we make this work, there's obviously other components to it, and there's I think a key benefit. Like, people is always like, what's the business implication of this? How does this allow something that isn't possible today with traditional software? So I want to talk about one example that I think tells the story very beautifully. Um, and this also ties into the value of NFTs. It's not really about pictures of gorillas and selling for
Right.
millions of dollars.
Apes
That's not that's not the end goal of NFT. It's really about encrypting personal data. It can actually change PIA and HIPAA and credit card and e-commerce, and create a value that's less likely to be hacked. But before we talk about that, I think one of the key things to mention is, for example, there's no global payroll platform today. It
right.
doesn't exist. You have to set up payroll in every country. So if you're a global company, you're dealing with payroll systems in every country, and it's necessary because you have to have the taxes and legal implications that come with that, right?
Right.
But if you are a global company, and let's face it, because of the pandemic, a lot of companies have learned to be more remote and leverage talents all over the world. How you pay for those talents is not so easy. So you work with partners and vendors who have relationships, who have those corporate entities in those countries. But the true value of decentralization is the empowerment where you can do this yourself and clear this yourself. One key ways to do that is with blockchain, because you actually can clear wallet to wallet, as long as you have the ability to translate those currencies into fiat, into traditional money. So in some respect, excuse me, with NFTs, the proper use of NFT, you can create a global payroll platform with blockchain. What are your thoughts on that, Bill?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, NFTs coupled with smart contracts, and the possibility of improving or disrupting payroll, and also cross-border payment rails, right? The old SWIFT system, and I understand there's some new banking upgrade, ISO compliance coming down the pipeline, right? That may be driving some of this. I think the opportunity is immense for businesses to reduce cost, to provide opportunity for inclusion in the workplace, with smooth and efficient, transparent payroll systems, cross-border payments, moving money quickly and low cost. I mean, I think nowadays it takes there's huge fees and delays in companies if they're regionally spread around the world, just to get payment, move money around just for payroll, just internally within the company, right? The fees and the delays are have the opportunity of being greatly reduced and efficiency improved with using a blockchain solution.
Now, a lot of people will argue and say, well, that's a nice, funny, and easy way to launder money. But
Yeah.
with full transparency in a decentralized system and smart contracts, that would be completely visible, even to an authority that could be monitoring that kind of transaction.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this idea that, oh yeah, that could just enable the bad guys to just do their thing?
Well,
Is that just a misunderstanding on how it works?
no, I mean, that's a great point, and I think that comes up a lot, right? And blockchain technology is transparent, right? And it's immutable. So you transact on the blockchain, there's no change in it, right? It's there, and the tools are there to query and inspect the blockchain. And I think that brings in, the need for a digital identity, right? So that KYC, ALM practices are easily put in place. But I think, one of the key points of contention, if you will, between centralization and decentralization is, ownership of data, right? So your personal data may be attached to your digital identity, and hopefully, in a self-sovereign way where you own your data and you give others permission, right, as you engage on the blockchain and in transactions to use or view your data. Hopefully there'll be the ability to keep and retain your data, but also to be transparent with respect to KYC and ALM, so that it reduces this concern, right, about money laundering or fraud, etc. I think there's great opportunity for that to solve that.
Yeah,
that problem.
absolutely. I want to read a little bit about the sort of promise of digital identity management from blockchain, which is really about securing uh, the identity management. It's an essential thing today, but blockchain-based identity solution can provide individuals and organizations with self-sovereign, secure, and tamper-proof digital identity. These can streamline, like you say, KYC, know your customer, anti-money laundering processes, reduce the risk of identity theft, and enhance data privacy. And this really speaks to how do you execute on this? And I really believe one of the ultimate value of non-fungible tokens is to tokenize all identities. Essentially, instead of walking around with a credit card, it's a tokenized identity, right? I do a transaction in an e-commerce platform. They don't need to know all my data or hold on to it. They just need to have my token, and that in itself can translate through those contracts into where it's going to get shipped to, because I decided that I control that, and how the money gets cleared.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies are struggling with how to make that transition in a way that lets users know that they're actually being more empowered. And part of it is just the platforms aren't there yet. I think maybe Cardano is probably the closest to getting to that decentralized model. What are you seeing? What do you think are the challenges to achieving this goal, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think Cardano that you mentioned. There's some others like Flare Network that are just up and coming, that are trying to solve problems exactly like that, right? How do they present it more to the public, especially with the public's kind of reaction to some of the centralized DEX, and the problems around that, right? I think the blockchain industry is kind of in a recovery mode right now from taking its licks in that respect. But hopefully it starts to get more of a voice, because not only is the potential there, but I think these platforms are being built out. If you look at, there's an increasing amount of developers, right, coming onto those platforms to start innovating using those protocols, with respect to secure wallets, secure and trustless digital identities, so that they can be built into the protocols and be easily used and uptake by business, right? Business has to see easy entry points. Do I have a set of APIs that allow me to transition my business onto the blockchain, right? And what layer 1 or layer 2 protocol is going to best facilitate that, so that it's transparent. I can do my business planning around it, and put together a plan to initiate that.
I would have to say I was kind of late to the blockchain world, and recently I've been an advisor to a number of blockchain companies, including a company building a DEX out of Switzerland called Genius Yield. And the one thing I discovered was it's very technically jargon in terms of how it presents itself in the marketplace. And I recall speaking to a lot of the founders and CEOs of these companies saying, you need to break this down into business terms that people can understand. Like what's ultimately the value of having a DEX? How does that compare to how we do it today? And as you begin to have more of a business language type of discussion about the value of blockchain and not so much on all the technology jargon that's associated with it, you begin to realize, oh, wow, these solutions could actually be adopted in the fiat world too. It's not just limited to this new, decentralized environment. The fiat world could actually leverage some of these technology to empower the investors and improve clearance of funds and transactions. So the business implications are far and wide. But part of the challenges is just the language that's used. It's highly technical, right? And like anything else, new technology, it's all about the jargon. And there's a few that are like, get it. And there's the rest are like, I don't understand how this works and I don't like it. So what are your thoughts around that? What can companies in this space do better to help everyone else understand what's actually happening and what the value of this is?
Well, I think, I think I saw there was a technology training company that was transitioning to roll out on one of the layer 1 blockchain protocols, right? And they were using NFTs, right? They plan to use NFTs as the mechanism of delivering their training, right, around blockchain, and taking, you drop in Discord channels of some of these blockchain projects, right? It's all techie guys, and they have their white papers hanging up there, but to take it from that white paper Discord techie space into mainstream, I think it's going to take companies like that are willing to bridge it and innovate to put the like blockchain 101 type of training modules out there and have dialogues about it, right? Blog about it, YouTube about it, social media about it, to really get the interaction with people, right? And bring the understanding level up so that people can see the potential benefits that blockchain brings around the DeFi space, digital identity space, and on the digital identity, it sure would be nice if things like voting moved over to the blockchain, right? With digital identities in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Let's keep talking about this. I think maybe one of the easiest things to comprehend if you're new to blockchain or if you have struggled with understanding what it means is this concept of smart contracts. I'm talking over my Alexa, who's reminding me of a calendar entry. I apologize. Nothing like being live. So let's talk about smart contracts. It's smart contracts are self-executing contract with the terms of agreement directly written into code. So they automatically execute when predefined conditions are met, eliminating the need for intermediaries and reducing the potential for disputes. Smart contracts can be used in various industries, including insurance, real estate, supply chain management, and more. By automating contract processes and increasing transparency, smart contracts can disrupt businesses by reducing costs, minimizing human error, and streamlining transaction. Now, this description is a very business-like description, not a difficult thing to understand what smart contracts are all about. Essentially, it's a vehicle for making transactions happen that eliminate human error, and it's transparent. You want to talk about this a little bit on how, maybe compare what this looks like against, like, say, let's say a traditional purchase order, for example?
Sure. I mean, one example I like to think about is, a real estate transaction. I'm trying to sell my house. Now imagine if my house was tokenized as an NFT, and I could submit that into a smart contract, right, with a potential buyer, who both of us having, digital identities on the blockchain. And now there's the potential for reduced cost, quick transaction. It might disrupt, the escrow would be taken care of, the title company, real estate attorney interaction would all be embedded into the code of the smart contract, right? And could very streamline and, maybe drop, this traditional 6%, 3% buyer seller to minimal, and reduce the other fees that go along with it too.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's probably a good example. I mean, you mentioned other insurance, and other applications for NFTs, for also for tokenizing, NFTs and, a digital economy, using smart contracts and reducing, another barrier, for investors, right, that may not have been able to, buy a home or apartment complex, for instance. They might be able to, through a smart contract and NFTs, invest in fractional ownership of something. I think that's a huge entry point that could be opened up to really be more inclusive for a lot of people that may want to enter into that type of investment opportunity.
As we come to wrap up, Bill, I can't help to think that perhaps the mind shift that needs to happen, it's not fiat versus blockchain, or how it's been versus how it could be, as it is accepting that there's a natural progression on how technology can enable and streamline things that have been done a certain way for a long time. That worked, but can be done better. It's like any other technological evolution. It's a disruption, but it's such a significant leap in disruption that I think a lot of people struggle with the idea that that's a big leap. We want to do iterative steps to get there, which is the traditional trajectory of technology. It's always iterative steps, and 20 years later, it's changed so much, but it wasn't so painful because it took 20 years to make that transition. Whereas in blockchain, it's like we go from this to that pretty instantly, and I think a lot of people are scared of that. And the other thing that I think is clear is people operating in this space need to change their language a lot. Stop being so techie and start talking about the business impact of what this represents, and talk about it in terms of how it relates to what's being done today, and what is the leap that's being proposed, and what's the value of that leap. And the more that conversation happens, the easier it's going to become for people to accept this as just another evolution in technology. And the other thing I think it's worth mentioning is AI will help blockchain as well, because it's going to, because that's introducing the possibility of things that are, again, a leapfrog forward. And so in some regards, some technologies lag depending on other dependencies. And I believe AI is going to actually help blockchain tremendously, because it's going to help the mindset of leaping forward. So let's see what happens, Bill. It's been great talking with you.
Yep. Great talking, Tullio.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for joining us again today. What do we got coming up? Let's see. Things are just heating up. We've been having a few Tech Leaders Unplugged conversations amongst the hosts and co-hosts, really to just prepare ourselves for the prime time of having our guests join us. And what we got coming up, we have Ravi Shankar, who's the enterprise CTO of Microsoft. Gary Sorrentino is CIO at Zoom. Daryl Bracken, CEO at Logitech, and Gil Rosen, who's the CMO of Amdocs. We have many others lined up, so stay tuned. We will have these shows with these amazing tech leaders and innovators and disruptors, and see what we can learn from them. And I love doing this because I learn every day, and hopefully you too will get something out of it as well and learn something new for yourself. Thanks for joining, and please have a great weekend, everyone.